Today's episode is brought to you by Slater's 50/50 and To a T Fitness.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Everything Sequel podcast. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. I'm sitting in the hot box, of course, in Pacific Beach, San Diego. With me, as always, my co-host, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. He's in Chula Vista in the tent. Tom, say hello.
Oh, shit.
If you want to talk like Michael Caine, you have to speak in short, choppy sentences.
That's right.
Today we're talking about the 1987 Jaws. Jaws the Revenge? Jaws 4 the Revenge? I guess technically
I believe it was just Jaws the Revenge.
I guess technically it's just Jaws the Revenge, directed by Joseph Sargent.
Joseph Sharkgent is fabulous.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, they were just like, well, his name sounds like Shark.
Yeah,
so
if you speak
get him
fast
on board.
enough and mess up, Sargent sounds like Sharkgent. Again, we're dealing with a movie that killed the franchise. Jaws 4 put an end to all Jaws movies. It's a $23 million budget. 7.1 million on its first weekend. Yeah, only garnered 20 in the USA. And then they said, no thank you. Famously, Michael Caine could not go get his Oscar for Hannah and the Sister and the Sisters. Is it Hannah and the?
Hannah and her sisters.
Her sisters, yeah, thank you. Hannah and her sisters. He is quoted as saying, I have never seen it, but by all accounts it is terrible. However, I have seen the house that it built, and it is terrific.
That's wonderful.
Pretty much sums
You're
up the
only
movie.
supposed to blow the bloody shark up.
Yeah. Whoa, man. One of my favorite things is they actually asked Roy Scheider to be in this movie. His quote is, Satan himself could not get me to do Jaws 4.
Well, I mean, this was. We might as well talk about the reputation of this movie. I was when I was doing research online for these movies.
Yeah, strangely, this is your second favorite movie in the series.
Yeah. We'll get to that.
That requires explanation.
This, the plethora of information I found about this movie was just how, when it came out in 1987, it was just a national joke.
Yeah.
For the entire summer. I found videos of...
But not its tagline.
Late night talk show comedians who were sort of using it as using the movie as a punchline. There's an extended clip on YouTube of Siskel and Ebert. Basically, they're doing a comic routine about this movie. It's not a piece of film criticism.
Yeah, they're up in, it's like from the Muppets.
Yes, like Statler and Waldorf from the Muppets.
Total, yeah.
Oh, it's so obvious. So this movie upon release was synonymous with bad movie making, and specifically the kind of sequel that is impossible to defend.
Well,
and, that's
defend it you must, because I'm in agreement with all of that.
Yeah. I had no idea. Like I said, I in a previous episode, I saw this on a sleepover, and as a kid, I was perfectly happy with it. I see some of the issues with it now, but
I'm glad you can admit it. It's the first step. It's the first step, Tom.
I can be positive about some aspects of it.
I'd like to know what. There's literally only one shot in this whole movie where I think, that was cool. And it's a single shot. Everything else to me is just... but also, I should be fair. Like, it's a deliciously bad movie. It's an absurdly, deliciously bad movie. It's not like it's not fun to watch. It's still fun to watch because it's just so bad.
Do you know how bad this movie is? Even the blurb on my DVR recording of this movie from TV is a stern critique of the lack of anthropological realism within.
What's it say?
I don't have that. I couldn't find the direct quote now, but it says it basically starts by saying, "Ignoring the behavior of the rest of his species, a great white shark travels to the Bahamas in search of revenge." I'm like, "Ooh, get you!"
Well, I think one of my favorite things about this movie is everything that was either cut or not shot, because it was intended to be a much different movie. Essentially, they wanted to do two things. Michael Caine plays the character of Hoagie, who flies the airplane, apparently from I don't know where from, to get to the Bahamas. He's picking up the Brody family. I don't from Florida, is that, or I don't know.
From
Does he run all the way up to Amity? It's hard to
Amity,
say.
I mean, yeah,
But
that seems to be it. Yeah.
But the two things that about this movie that are not present, but that you see signs of, are one, Hoagie runs drugs for a drug dealer, and two, somehow Michael Brody upset a voodoo priestess in the Bahamas, and there's the whole storyline is this is supposed to be a voodoo shark. The shark is coming after him because a voodoo curse has been put on him, which you do not see overtly in the movie, but when you come in knowing that knowledge, you'll see those things in there.
Yeah, it's well, I mean, those two things are fascinating. I understand. I understand editing out the fact that Michael Caine's a drug dealer because he needs to be sympathetic. I get that part. But,
drug runner.
Drug runner.
Guy's just trying to earn $1, okay?
But yes, I think the voodoo.
He's got a gambling habit he's got to feed.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of conflicted on the voodoo storyline because, in one sense, yes, it would account for a lot of the nonsense,
right?
Regards to the shark's behavior in this movie. And the other side, I see how this movie handles race already.
Yeah.
Do we want voodoo on top of that?
Yeah, I don't think we need to add it. Yeah. It's a frightening thought, isn't it? So again,
really
it's a sort of reoccurring theme of movies we're watching that took place or were made in the 80s, and you see this sort of inherent racism just stricken throughout the movies, and it's makes them hard to watch at times.
Yeah, and we get a similar thing to what we had in Jaws 3D, where you have a leading you have an African American actor playing a native character, but you have to refer to their race at some point.
Yeah,
like he says something about white meat at one point, and it's like, just, we don't need to talk about this. We know we're in the Bahamas. It's a real shame.
Even with the hair, the character of Mario Van Peebles, Jake, and he's got his dreadlocks and he puts them up like alien antennae because the little girl, I think, got an alien for Christmas or something like that. I can't remember.
This is we had the first screen appearance of Napoleon Dynamite in Jaws 2. This is the first screen appearance of Hermes from Futurama.
There you go. Yeah.
I think that's interesting because Superman 4 was also cut to pieces and suffered a similar fate. But yeah, so it would be interesting to speculate what putting that material back in would do. On the other hand, I would be very, very worried about seeing any of it on screen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's jump in and try to, piece this movie together if we can. We start off in Amity.
Yeah.
We are seeing...
Not SeaWorld.
Nope, we are not in SeaWorld. Michael Brody is living in the Bahamas. He has gone from some sort of technical engineer to a biological engineer. Not an engineer even, just studying bioscience.
Maybe we need to talk about this now, but I want to get your opinion on this. Do we think Jaws 3 exists in the timeline?
I don't think it does.
You see, I'm conflicted because I think you can argue it either way. I mean, Mike Brody has the same. He's with a different woman, but he has a similar job and a
Not
similar
really, though.
kind.
He was a technical guy in 3D.
Right.
I think I read at some point that Jaws 3D was in the end considered not canon, which is to me ridiculous.
Oh yes.
I do
absolutely.
think that the characters and the story is close enough. Michael could have readjusted what he was doing.
Right.
He is working on his PhD,
Uh
so
huh. Yeah.
I do think that it should count as canon, even regardless of whether or not they intended that. I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
I think it's strange that Sean Brody ends up going home and becomes, a
Yeah.
deputy sheriff and is working out on the water,
Yes.
and
Yes.
meets quite the grisly death to start this movie.
It really yeah. And yeah, I actually I'm gonna say I think that is one of my favorite moments in the entire film, and
Yeah.
kudos to this movie for killing off a major legacy character in the first few minutes in quite a brutal fashion.
Very brutal.
It's I think that does show a kind of guts and balls that you need to have if you're going to be a sequel.
Yeah.
It's like you can't have this reverence for these legacy characters in the Sims way, and
Everybody should be fair game.
yeah, absolutely, and that sense I think that drives the rest of the movie.
If
We
for
think
no other
everyone can
reason,
die.
than just to hear Sean's niece say, "Uncle Sean's dead,"
Well, yeah, the big having had this cataclysmic moment in the franchise, everybody very quickly gets over this death.
so quickly.
by the new this is before Christmas, and by New Year they are out partying. They're going on double
Right.
dates in the Bahamas.
Well, he dies a day before Christmas, or a couple
something
days.
like it's.
He
so
dies like a
tight.
couple days before Christmas. They're back in the Bahamas for Christmas.
Yes.
And then by New Year's, he's pretty much forgotten.
I mean, I think going back to the sort of canon issue, I do wonder whether recasting both Mike and Sean with actors who look closer to grown-up versions of the actors from Jaws 2,
Right.
whether that is a bold statement of let's treat Jaws 3D like it was a dream, kind of thing. They should have just had them waking up and it's like, told just this Bob Newhart it. I dreamt I was working at SeaWorld, and then a shark tried to get revenge for me killing it. So it's like, go back to sleep, honey.
Yeah, you could do a St. Elsewhere. It all just takes place in a snow globe.
That would have been a healthier way to deal with that.
But I like
I
seeing The Last Starfighter as Mike Brody, so I'm fully on board.
Yeah, and he's a more convincing Mike if you take the original two films than Dennis Quaid. But of course, Dennis Quaid, as we have established, looked nothing like Mike Brody would ever look. But that's fine. But it's
What
it's
do
a
you
little
think
bit
about bringing Lorraine Gary back as Ellen Brody and focusing this whole movie on her story?
Listen,
Does that work for you?
Plenty of people have bashed her performance in this movie, and I don't want to add to that negativity. The fact it's indisputable that Lorraine Gary rocks the first two movies. She is awesome in those first two movies.
I agree.
But it was a bad choice for her to. She can't carry this movie on her own, and that's what the movie asked her to do.
Right.
I will draw, I don't want to rip apart her performance because I think large parts of it are fine. I just don't think it's a very compelling star performance. But she has some bad crying in this movie.
She does.
Oh, it is awful. And I believe she is the spouse of the head of AMC, who were making the movie at the time. So this was nepotism, clearly.
Yeah. For all the movies, actually. I mean.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and obviously, she you don't want to see Jaws 1 or 2 without her. But I don't want this movie to be focusing on her, and it really is.
Yeah,
So
completely and totally. Let me ask you
but
this.
I don't want to lay that fault for Lorraine Gary because
No, I
she's
think
great in
you
those
know,
first
it's
two
a
movies.
yeoman's effort. She really does give it her best. But like you said, there are things that fall flat, and there are things that do work.
Yeah,
One thing I was struck by, you know, she's told Mike, her son, several times she doesn't want him in the water at all. Don't you ever go in the
yeah,
ocean. We're all
yeah.
going to stay safe. And then they go down to the Bahamas, and all of a sudden you start seeing her swimming in the ocean. Did you find yourself in that moment saying, "This better be a dream sequence, or I'm gonna dick punch this chick"?
Right,
You're
yeah.
just
I
so
mean,
offended she's in the water, you know?
and this is, we're at that point in the franchise where,
I
we've
should
seen
say,
it.
by the way, I do not condone dick punching of any woman at any time.
It's so we've got to that point in the franchise where we've seen everything vis-a-vis a shark attack.
Yeah.
So dream sequence is where we kind of have to go in order to see these people, and unless you want to you want to kill off another major character.
Hmm.
If you want to see that shark attack, either has to be somewhat. It has to be like the Jaws equivalent of a red shirt, or you do it to a big character in a dream sequence. So I understand that, but interestingly, that's the clip that Siskel and Ebert showed in their review to kind of to riff off, for their little comedy routine.
Right.
So it is like a lot of people. But I think there are far worse crimes than this. This is sort of like, well, yeah. I mean, if you're gonna have another shark attack, a dream sequence is probably the best way to do it. But,
There you go. All right. Well, we're just getting started on Jaws the Revenge, and when we come back, we'll finish up right after this. And don't forget, listeners, at the end, we're going to be pitching a sequel. All right, stay tuned. Look, people, we're living in strange times. We know that, don't we? Of course we do. People don't even know what to do with themselves. We're getting stir crazy. Well, get outside and get yourself some great food, I say. You need to go to Slater's 50/50 in Point Loma's Liberty Station. It's time to treat yourself to booze, to beer, to burgers, and more. They have their full menu, people. Their full menu, I say. How many restaurants do you know that are doing that? Most places are doing a quarter of their menu, probably. Some might be doing a half. Maybe a few have got 3/4 of a menu. But Slater's 50/50 has their full menu, including their signature 50/50 patty. It's half ground beef. It's half ground bacon. It's 100% delicious. What more could you possibly ask? Worried about social distancing? Well, it is in place, people. Tables are separated, and the staff will always be seen wearing masks. You're out of excuses. Get off your keister and come on down to Liberty Station's own Slater's 50/50. Indoor dining available. Outdoor dining available. Bring the family. Bring your dog. Come enjoy the normal again. Good day to you. I said good day. And we're back. We're talking about Jaws the Revenge today. Tom,
Yes.
you declared this as your second favorite movie in the series. You say, and yet you say it's a bad movie.
Yes.
So, well, I guess I was going to ask you how this is possible, but hearing what you had to say about Jaws 2, I get what you're saying about Jaws 2 and its problems, but they're really not as big as the problems in Jaws 4?
No, it depends on your perspective. I mean,
How about the perspective of reality?
compared to a reality, the plot of this movie. Now, there's a scene very early on where, after the death of Sean, Lorraine Gary's Ellen Brody, she goes on a kind of rampage of paranoid ramblings, which seem to be just the kind of product of trauma about how the shark is out to get her family,
Right.
and it claimed another victim. And you're like, okay, so that's her rambling in her traumatized state. No, that's the plot of the movie. That all turns out to be true.
Correct.
Um, and did a little bit of research on this, like how could this possibly come about? We've already said that the previous two movies do kind of set us up for this. It shouldn't, if you watch them in succession, it shouldn't be a big surprise that this is where they went. But the director Joseph Sargent pitched this to the studio on a whim of this will never get passed.
Yeah,
This will never
right.
get
Yes.
greenlit.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful interview with him on YouTube where not only does he forget the facts of the movie while he's recounting the plot, he apparently thinks that Roy Scheider did die in a shark attack. He then goes on to say that they threw this upstairs the studio and they were like, "Great, go ahead and make it.
Yeah.
See you in a
All
month
right.
or whatever, however long
Off
this
you
takes."
go.
So, and I can see that, but
Well,
the
there's also
premise-
seems to be a reverse thing going on because he's also implementing this idea of like Lady Brody can just touch seawater and sense that the shark is close as well.
Yes,
They're very
I mean,
connected.
You have to
Psychically,
invest
I
in.
mean.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you have to invest in the idea that the revelation in this movie, although it's never said in dialogue, is that the Brody family are a family of spiritualists, and they are psychically connected to each other and the water and sharks. And this allows Ellen Brody to recall firsthand things that have not happened to her and that she could never
Correct.
possibly
I've
have
seen, yeah. I love that they include that in this movie.
So
The only thing this movie
yeah.
is missing is her speaking in tongues based on what you just said.
Right. So obviously this is problematic. We're ignoring reality. There was a scientific consultant on the film. I don't know. Did they just ignore everything? That
Must
they
have been
said?
drunk. Must have been drunk every day,
yeah.
not doing their job.
So, I kind of, what I do is sort of separate. I try and forget that as much as possible, as indeed the movie does. It tries to forget the fact that this movie is based on a scientific impossibility.
So your liking it is based on your forgetting what the movie is forgetting.
Yes.
Fantastic.
And just enjoying, I think that there's some great underwater photography.
There
work.
is, I said, there's one shot in this whole movie that I love, and it's when the shark tries to get Michael Brody when he is in the submarine. And of course, we know that these sharks hate transportation, so it eats the submarine. And he swims into a sunken ship, which somehow this shark is miraculously just going up ladders and turning tight corners. And it's a 25-foot, 30-foot shark, but it has no problems. But there is one great shot in that sequence when Michael looks up and you can kind of see from the bottom of the boat, a kind of portal out of the boat, and you see a shark swim over it. And that shot looks fucking great.
Yeah. And so I think
Never mind that right after it, the shark eats the barge that they're on, and the barge seems to be bleeding because there's blood in the water.
There's a lot of new age nonsense.
Explain that to me, if you will.
A lot of new age nonsense that contaminates a lot of this movie. I think when they decide that they're going to use an electromagnetic device. I mean, it's snake oil, level of scientific research going on.
But
here.
it's covered by Mario Van Peebles saying, my shit always works.
That's right. I think nobody is asking. Everyone's reaction is, "Wait, Mike, you didn't tell us there was a shark." No, wait, Mike, there's a great white shark in the Bahamas.
Yeah, I was very much struck by how terrible Mike Brody's marriage is going to be by the end of this movie.
Yeah. I think once Michael Caine joins the movie, we get a little bit of a lift. He's aware of how ridiculous this movie is and starts to have fun with it. That great oh shit moment.
Yeah.
He tells a story about taking 100 nuns to Nairobi, and it's so that's that helps. That helps us forget the principle that this film.
Well,
is
and it
based
also
upon.
kind of by the end, it really takes on like full action movie mode. Like Lady Brody
Yeah.
is like, I'm gonna take care of some fucking business. I'm going out on
She
this
gets on a
ship,
boat.
on this boat, and
She
I am
gets on
gonna
a
kill
boat.
that shark. Come
She
what
gets on a
may,
boat.
that shark is going down. But then the shark comes
Yeah.
and attacks, and she's like, oh my god, like. The idea she came out there without a single plan, but then she develops a new
Really, she
plan
did.
based on what happens. Oh,
That's right. And the film Jaws 2 decided to stay in Amity and basically regurgitate the first movie, and we look like we're going to do the same thing here, and then we have a major U-turn where Sean is killed by the great white shark.
Right after saying he should we got to put out cookies and a beer for Santa. Like that's
right.
the most common thing.
And in some
30-year-old
man
putting out cookies and a beer for Santa.
Exactly. In some versions of this timeline, that shark is related to the shark from Jaws 3D. But
it seems to me they're all related to each other. They're all
right. Absolutely. So those are some strengths of the movie. I have a lot of affection with it because of how long it's been with me throughout my life. But there is a lot that's impossible to defend about this movie. I think
only 2 deaths in this movie.
Right.
You got Sean and you got Banana Boat Lady.
Jake. Despite what the movie tells us, Jake dies in this movie.
That's true. In the original version, he died.
Maybe he's a voodoo zombie. I don't know, but the person that comes back from that water is not Jake. I don't know if Jake has a twin brother. The spirit of Jake. But that man got killed.
The spirit of Mario Van Peebles. But I believe in the original theatrical release, he died. And then there were competing versions. There was like a European version. There was an AMC version. And the AMC version, I think, is the one that's won out since.
It must have been.
Where they put in a bunch of shots from the original Jaws movies. You could see the rope as the ropes that were tied to the barrels. You could see those as the sharks falling to the shore because it's the exact same. It's the shot from Jaws. As Michael is, I guess, hurting the shark's brain with electric sharks and making it jump out of the water so that his mom can impale it with a boat. Which oddly makes the shark explode.
I think, I mean, the most disappointing aspects of the movie for me, and even Jaws 2 didn't sink this low, was to have reused footage from the first movie in monochrome, as if this movie, as if
to
the
make
original
it,
Jaws was from the was from the 1920s.
Make it artsy.
It was from
to make
1975.
it artsy. Yeah.
It was 1975.
And they even managed to do it from a scene earlier in their own movie with Sean's death, which she wasn't present for, and yet she's remembering it as though it happened right in front of her.
And these seem like these seem when there's enough movies in a franchise, they start to have this kind of nostalgia urge to sort of show scenes from the previous movie, and it's a real sort of bait and switch act. Especially in this movie, you have both a reenactment of the scene in which Roy Scheider does mime with his son,
right? But it was the other son. It was
the different son.
Sean,
and then it was a daughter. Yeah, with his Mike reenacts it with his daughter, and we also see that scene
again
at Sean's funeral, like the actual scene. So this movie is very confused about like whether it wants to be. I mean, I want it to go full guns blazing.
Oh, it does.
Full guns blazing with the fact that we're basically in the realms of science fiction now.
Correct.
But it doesn't do that. It tries to pull back from that, and that muddies the waters a little bit. And I think that's what makes it a bad movie. If it had sort of pushed the mystical elements to the point of no return, I think I would have enjoyed it slightly more. But what we get is that this movie is trying to it's trying to have its cake and eat it with regards to recreating the original and then doing something completely bizarre and new. And I think Jaws 3D gets that balance much better.
Agreed. Yeah. Let's face it. This movie is a piece of shit, but it's a piece of shit worth loving. You can love it just based on its being a piece of shit. That is Jaws 4, ladies and gentlemen. Tell us what you think. We're going to take another quick break and then we'll be right back and we're going to pitch a sequel right after this. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. And we're back. All right, this is the Pitch a Sequel segment. In this segment, Tom and I will both pitch one last sequel for this franchise. Tom, Jaws 5, where are you going, buddy?
It's actually Jaw 5 because
Okay.
I've turned the S into a 5.
Nice.
Sevenin, Num3as, and also my previous picture sequel, 5 Operman.
5 Operman.
And this movie is told in the storytelling style established by Francis Ford Coppola in The Godfather Part 2. It's a split.
Of course it is.
It's split historical focus. So it continues on the story of the Brodies from 1987 onwards, and it also flashes back periodically to the early 1930s, where we see Robert Shaw's, what's his name?
Quint.
What's Robert Shaw's name?
Quint.
All right, sorry. Quint as a young man.
That's interesting.
And the premise behind this movie is...
Like, are we going to see the Indianapolis story or
well,
other things from Quint?
Here we go.
All right.
Because the Brody family returned from the Bahamas to Amity because Amity has been bought by a developer who wants to turn it into a theme park. Who wants to turn Amity into a
based on their horror
coastal sea-based attraction, and part of building this new theme park involves restructuring the beaches of Amity, and Alan Brody is as the front line protesting this, talking about the legacy of Sheriff Brody, son dying, tribute to that, all that nonsense. But it's just once it's excavated, this is when we go into the flashback because we find an underground laboratory in which there are still genetically engineered sharks being built. And we go back to the 1930s and reveal that the sharks throughout the Jaws franchise are in fact genetically engineered sharks who were devised as a wartime project to fight the Nazis. And like the Manhattan Project is great.
You really do want sequels to get more and more ridiculous, don't you?
And Quint discovered this in the 30s, and he was and so we reveal how he discovered this underground laboratory while he was out, I don't know, like fishing for shells or something, and he discovered it, and they say, well, we got to use these sharks to fight the Nazis, and he's like, no, the sharks are going to escape and we'll get out of control. And so we see how Quint was involved in the cover up of these Nazi sharks, sworn to secrecy, never to reveal it, even to his death on the Orca in 1975. Whereas at the same time, the Brodies are discovering the same things, and a new generation of sharks who are being cultivated in these underground laboratories are being released into the water again. So we get more sharks than ever before. We get the Brodies. We get young Quint. Basically, it's everything you've ever not wanted in a Jaws movie, but in the same movie.
Yeah, I mean, you might be missing out on a title, Nazi Sharks, with this sequel.
Jaws 5.
But obviously, you need people to know that this is in the Jaws universe.
Well, I don't want to blow that plot twist. This is not E.G. Marshall as the president. I don't want to blow.
That's true. That's true.
It's going to be a turning point in the movie when you realize these are Nazi fighting, genetically engineered sharks that have been with us the whole time.
Well, as what I'm starting to gather might be a theme, I didn't go quite so big, Tom.
Yes.
My story, my pitch a sequel is also going back to Amity, and Michael's back home. He's back in his family home. He is divorced based on what happened in Jaws 4, and his mom's gone, so he's on his own. He is he's got his PhD. He does still work on the water, and shark attacks start happening. And what happens is maybe you'll see Hooper again, maybe you won't, but at the very least you're going to see a conservationist, kind of going back to the theme from Jaws 3D.
Mm-hmm.
And the big juxtaposition, like the big thing about this movie is this argument about, should this shark be destroyed? Should this shark not be destroyed? Because I think if you were going to do it, like I would set this now in 2020. And the idea of whether or not that shark should be destroyed, I think would be the legitimate argument going on in the town.
Mike's still working on his PhD?
No. He has his PhD.
Oh, he has his PhD.
He's still working on the sea. He still studies things in the ocean, possibly even great whites. I like the idea myself of if great whites come there every summer, he's tagging them. He's trying to find out information about them. He's trying to make it as safe as possible for sharks and people to coexist. And then somebody close to him dies, and now he has to make this decision of what he thinks should happen. Does he want to destroy the shark, or should the shark live?
Wow.
And that's my pitch a sequel.
Oh wow. Okay. So we've got a very quiet,
straightforward,
and then we've got a sequel spanning like 50 years.
Yeah.
That involves genetically engineered Nazi fighting sharks. Okay. Well,
so you tell us, dear listeners, where does your love lie? Let us know. You can vote on our sequels. Tell us your pitch a sequel idea. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on the Facebook. Find us on Twitter. Let us know. That's it for Jaws: The Revenge. Here in the Hot Box, my name's Mike Shantz at the How Dare You Awards. Tom Stewart is from Lonesome Whistle Productions. Tom, say goodbye to the good people.
a flying